Welcome back, Endgame community. It's Chris, and today we're going to talk about some players who did not meet expectations in Week 11 and maybe haven't been meeting expectations all season long. And I'm going to let you know, should you not be panicking about them. Let's get into it. All right, let's start as we do at the running back position, and I got to talk about DeAndre Swift again. What is happening with DeAndre Swift? Yes, he once again scored a touchdown to save his day, but there are real reasons to be panicked here. Number one, hardly touched the ball in this game. Not getting a ton of carries, not getting a ton of receptions. But number two, which is even more concerning, is Justin Jackson is getting more usage than DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift isn't even the number 2 behind Jamal Williams. He's the number 3 behind Justin Jackson. I don't understand it. He's not on the injury report. We're not hearing about him banged up. He seems to be healthy. I don't know if this is something with the coaches. They don't trust him. I don't know what is going on. But right now you have to be extremely panicked about DeAndre Swift. And DeAndre Swift is honestly borderline unstartable for the moment. All right, another running back that really let down in Week 11, and there were a lot of them, was Dameon Pierce. Look, Pierce has been very good this season in real life and in fantasy. No, he hasn't been an absolute stud, putting up huge numbers, but he's been a very high floor. Every week running back you can just put in your lineup, set and forget, and not worry about it. And then Week 11 happened. 8 yards against Washington. I know Washington is a good run defense, but my goodness, 8 rushing yards for the whole game on 10 carries. Not what you wanted to see, not what we were looking for. I can't put the panic level too high here because, again, Pierce has been so good all year, but maybe defenses are starting to figure out, like, hey, we just got to shut down this running game and we don't have to worry about anything because Davis Mills in this passing game cannot beat us. So, not going to put the panic level high. I'm going to put the panic level medium for Dameon Pierce. He does have some nice matchups ahead, but for right now, panic level medium, hoping better days are ahead. And another running back who saved his day with a touchdown, but a kick return touchdown, was Cordarrelle Patterson. Look, we know Cordarrelle Patterson is a great kick returner. He now has the record for most touchdowns ever on kick returns. But that was his first kick return touchdown of the entire year. I don't think he had a kick return touchdown last year either. So obviously we can't be banking on kick return touchdowns every single week for Cordarrelle Patterson. What did he do outside of that? Pretty much nothing. 10 carries, 2 catches, not even 60 yards, had a fumble. We can't be banking on Cordarrelle Patterson to rip off kickoff runs every week to save our fantasy team. And this is 2 weeks in a row where we've seen he's splitting with not only Tyler Algier, but also Caleb Huntley. Only 15 carries over the last 2 games for Cordarrelle Patterson. Kind of like this whole offense. There's not enough here for one guy to be like a week in, week out, must start player. Patterson's still a guy you'll probably want to start in good matchups. He can always score rushing touchdowns, not kick return touchdowns. But still, you've got to be really worried here. Again, 2 weeks in a row, we're seeing a lot of Algier, a lot of Caleb Huntley. He's nothing even close to a workhorse, really a guy who's going to become very touchdown dependent going forward. So I got to put the panic level high for Cordarrelle Patterson. All right, another back that's kind of counted on to be in every week, RB2, just put him in your lineup and take what you get, is Miles Sanders. And the last 2 weeks, what you've gotten is very little. And kind of this goes with the Eagles as a whole here, right? We've seen the last 2 weeks, the Eagles defense, the offense, neither one has been playing as well as they did, the first 8 weeks, 9 weeks of the season here. And it's really hurt Miles Sanders because they've been having to throw more. They haven't really been able to establish a run. And we already know Miles Sanders is a pretty boom-bust guy anyways. And he's going to get vultured many times by Jalen Hurts around the goal line, as he did again in Week 11. But still, Miles Sanders is one of those guys. He's at RB in a good situation, in a good offense. He's a talented back. You just put him in your lineup, kind of just close your eyes and hope for the best. So I'm going to put panic level low here for Miles Sanders because this just kind of is who he is. Now let's move on to a couple guys who, were kind of picked up off waiver wires. Not really guys we thought we'd be starting every week at the beginning of the season, but now a lot of teams have really been relying on them. And let's start with D'Onta Foreman. Has had 2 great games against Atlanta, 1 bad game in there, and now another horrible game. And look, the problem here is Baker Mayfield. This entire offense with Baker Mayfield is a joke. It's barely an NFL offense. It cannot sustain anybody. It can't sustain a wide receiver like DJ Moore. It can't sustain a running back. It can't sustain anything. And the problem here is PJ Walker has a high ankle sprain. So we're probably looking at least a couple more weeks before we see PJ Walker again. And even then, what are we really getting out of this offense? It wasn't like they were lighting it up. They're not going to play Atlanta ever again this season because they've already played them twice. So to me, I'm not going to say you have to drop D'Onta Foreman, back to the waiver wires. If you're in a shallower league, you definitely can. But I mean, panic level has to be sky high here for D'Onta Foreman, just because the panic level has to be sky high for this entire offense for however long Baker Mayfield is the quarterback. And then look, it has been a great story for Brian Robinson. Was coming on in training camp, in preseason, was going to be the starting running back. Unfortunately, got shot in the leg, was able to come back, make a full recovery, and start playing. And look, I'm sure me and everybody else is rooting for the guy. But unfortunately, in real life and in fantasy, he has not been good. Going up against a Houston defense, the worst run defense in the league by far, 57 yards on 15 carries. Again, a terrible run defense here. Last week, we saw it against the Eagles. It took him 26 carries to barely crack 80 yards. Look, maybe that leg is not close to 100%, and it wouldn't shock me one bit, right? The guy got shot. We probably can't expect that leg to be 100%, but also this offense, this offensive line, there's just not a lot here for him. It's touchdown or nothing for this guy. I really don't see how he can be in fantasy lineups anymore, because if he can't get it done against Houston, when is he going to get it done? So panic level high for Brian Robinson, cannot be started. All right, let's move on to wide receiver, and not necessarily the biggest name, but what happened to Tyler Boyd this week? Are you kidding me, Tyler Boyd? In a smash matchup where T. Higgins goes absolutely off, Samaje Perine catches 3 touchdowns. It takes you till almost the end of the game to get your first catch, and you only get 2 catches in the entire game. Didn't get this at all. I know Tyler Boyd wrecked a lot of fantasy weeks this week. He was in a great spot. This should have been a big game. And now there's reports that Ja'Marr Chase is no longer on crutches. He could be back as early as next week, which is just going to kill Tyler Boyd's value going forward. So look, if you picked up Tyler Boyd when Chase got hurt, or maybe you drafted him and he was sitting on your bench, he's had some nice weeks here. But after this terrible performance with Chase being back soon, I just don't know how the panic level can be anything but high for Tyler Boyd. And there's just no way I could put Tyler Boyd in my lineups going forward. And then a rookie who was really coming on before the team's bye and really did nothing here in week 11 was Garrett Wilson. And look, it's easy to say, well, it was the Patriots, it's a tough matchup. But a couple weeks ago, or week 8, I think it was, when they played the Patriots, he had a great game, 7 catches, over 100 yards. And we've seen that up until the bye. He was catching a bunch of passes, racking up a bunch of yards. This week, not so much. Now, obviously, this was an ugly game. Zach Wilson played terrible. There weren't a lot of points. It was, really it was 2 field goals and a kick return touchdown. That was all of the scoring in this game, but still, we would have liked to see more from Garrett Wilson, more involved, more catches, more yards, but still, it's a rookie wide receiver. He's going to be volatile. He's attached to a bad quarterback, a bad offense. There's going to be ups. There's going to be downs. Probably a guy you're just going to want to sit in tough matchups like this, play him in better matchups. He does have a pretty good schedule to finish off the season here, so I'm going to put the panic level medium on Garrett Wilson. And then finally, got to talk about Allen Lazard. 2 weeks in a row, he's been really overshadowed by Christian Watson. Thought he would be much better here in week 11, going against a Titan secondary that's really bad. He dropping passes that he should be catching. Aaron Rodgers missing him when he's wide open. I mean, I don't know what's going on. I thought there'd be a better connection between Aaron Rodgers and Allen Lazard. Maybe it was a cold. They looked like they didn't even want to be out there in that game. It was cold. They're not going anywhere this year. I'm really not sure. But on the plus side, he did have 11 targets, so at least that is still there. And he still does offer a decent floor, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on with this whole offense with Aaron Rodgers. You got to think he's on his way out. This is his last year. Almost no chance he plays next year. But even still, it's Allen Lazard. You're not banking on Allen Lazard to win you weeks or carry your fantasy team. I think he'll be better going forward. I'm going to put the panic level low for Allen Lazard. And then let's move on to tight end, and we got to start with Cole Kmet. The touchdowns finally stopped, and so did the fantasy points. 6.5 fantasy points this week in PPR leagues. Didn't catch a lot of passes. He did have that really nice one-handed catch, and then you didn't hear from Cole Kmet for 2 quarters. Just nothing for Cole Kmet. Another game where Justin Fields ran the ball a ton. We saw Darnell Mooney have some big plays, some big gains. This is the thing. I think people get a little too excited when a guy goes on a touchdown heater like Cole Kmet went on, where he had 5 touchdowns over 3 games, and people think this guy's just going to score a touchdown every single week for the rest of the season, and then they don't. So the other downside here for Cole Kmet is this was the last really smash matchup until week 17 when they played Detroit. From now until week 17, it's nothing but tough matchups for Cole Kmet, and the Bears still have their bye week. So I still think Kmet's a guy, at least for one more week, you got to roll with him and see how he's used and see if he bounces back. But not going to put the panic level high here, but definitely starting to get a little panicky again for Cole Kmet. But I'm going to put the panic level medium on Cole Kmet. And then David Njoku made it back from his high ankle sprain, but he didn't really make it back for your fantasy team. Right? 2 catches in this game, not a lot of yards. And the worst part was we saw Harrison Bryant very involved, got targets near the goal line in the end zone. Maybe Njoku wasn't 100% yet. Maybe he played limited snaps. Not really sure. Haven't looked at the snap counts yet, but I think Njoku will be okay. I'm going to chalk this up to, again, coming off a high ankle sprain. Probably didn't play a lot. Probably not 100%. I think if you have Njoku, you'll be okay. Don't rage drop him or anything like that. Hold on to him. Keep riding with him. He'll get better. Panic level low for David Njoku. And then we got to move on to quarterback, and we got to talk about Josh Allen. Now, I get for fantasy prior to week 11, Josh Allen has been good. But there's been signs. Interceptions, not putting up those monster games, not throwing for a ton of yards, not throwing for a ton of touchdowns. And it finally all kind of came to a head here in week 11 when he only gave you 12 fantasy points. 12 fantasy points from Josh Allen. And you can't blame the weather because they got to play inside in the dome in Detroit. They had perfect weather. I don't know if it's the elbow. I don't know if he's just going through a slump, but something's going on here. This offense is not clicking the way it was early in the season when they were just scoring at a crazy rate, scoring touchdowns every time they touched the ball, it seemed like. But still, it's Josh Allen. I cannot panic on Josh Allen, and you should not be panicking on Josh Allen either. I got to put the panic level very low for Josh Allen. Now, if this continues, if we see this again, they play again in Detroit, against Detroit here on Thursday in Thanksgiving. If he has another bad game in that one, then we might need to start panicking. And then finally, Lamar Jackson. I don't know if we're going to see elite Lamar Jackson this year. He had that nice game last week, but if you look at his last 7 games, 6 of those games, he scored 17 or less fantasy points. He got you 17 points today, and that's only because he ran in a touchdown. The problem here is they don't have any weapons. They have Mark Andrews, and then they have Devin Duvernay, Prochet, Isaiah Likely. They don't have any weapons for him to throw to, and that's going to be a problem going forward for his upside. I'm not sure we can treat Lamar Jackson as an every week, top 5, no doubt about it, quarterback going forward. I mean, he's still a guy you're going to start in 1 QB leagues, just not a no doubt, no-brainer, league-winning type quarterback. And look, we know Bateman is not coming back. It's not going to get better. It's not like they're going to suddenly, get all these wide receivers and all these weapons. He's pretty much stuck with what he has right now. So still, a decent floor guy, but not a high ceiling guy anymore. Panic level has to be fairly high if you have Lamar Jackson because he's probably not going to give you what you drafted him for. All right, so now you know some players you maybe should or should not be panicking on. What about who to pick up off waiver wire? What about who to start, who to sit, who could boom? We got you covered. Everything you need to win your Week 12 matchup right here in our Week 12 playlist. Check it out.